Okay, hello. This is session 20 of Against the Shadow. You have walked into the hall of Thorin Oakenshield after you had gone to see King Gurney of the Firebeards and the Council of the Broadbeams. The third and final Dwarven Kingdom in the Blue Mountains is that of Thorin Oakenshield. Not as welcoming this place as the rest that you had gone to, much darker, somehow lesser, although much more military, a lot more soldiers and guards all around. And you had been brought into Thorin's throne room, very austere and stark, with sort of tattered banners, maybe rescued from Erebor, hanging. And Thorin is sitting on this big throne that's quite a few stairs up, and next to him stands this man, which in itself is odd that it's a man. The dwarves typically don't trust the men, or certainly wouldn't trust them as advisors. This is not just a man of Gondor or a man of Rohan. It is a man, the kind of which you've never seen before. He's tall and thin. He has this oiled beard, sort of black and curled. He's got this blue turban on his head and sort of bluish robes throughout. This curved sword at his side and a ivory staff in his right hand as he stands and watches. And then underneath where the stairs end, there's a smaller chair in which sits Balin, also a fairly famous dwarf. And there's just this sort of like silence. You can hear your footsteps echo around the, or maybe it's reverb, around the hall as you approach Thorin's throne. And so you have come here at last.
Faroth immediately drops into diplomacy mode. And he looks at this dwarf and he says, Thorin Oakenshield, my name is Faroth, son of Fardred. With me I present Bord and Cyneric. I've forgotten your name.
Beregond.
Beregond. Oh my god, what's wrong with me? I'm Beregond of Minas Ithil. And we bring tidings. Dark tidings.
I know of your tidings. You spoke first with the Firebeards and then with the Broadbeams, and then you deigned to come speak with me. How generous of you.
And Faroth is taken aback slightly, and he sort of glances over to his friends, and then he says, no insult was meant. It just happens that you were further away than the rest.
Mm-hmm. And what? And the blue man comes and he like whispers in Thorin's ear.
Beregond
he nods.
spits.
And what did you promise them? For dwarven lives that you ask for, what did you promise King Gurney? What did you promise the Council of the Broadbeams? And what is left for me?
It was an agreement that would serve all of your kind, Thorin. A deal to use your forces to claim Erebor. And when that is done, Gundabad.
Claim it. Claim Gundabad. And claim Erebor. What right have you to claim Erebor? It's mine.
Indeed, and that is the affairs of your kind. But while my people remain prisoner within the walls of Gundabad, then the problem becomes ours. And your kind would only consent to aiding us in this plight, despite it being the place where your kind breathed their first breath. They would only consent to help us if the deal was enriched with the taking of Erebor.
What's your plan then? To use dwarven forces to push the orcs out of Gundabad to rescue the paltry lives of the men enslaved there? What is the life of a man compared to the life of a dwarf, when dwarven children are so rare and live for so long? Every death that we feel keenly and cannot be replaced.
Farrell wasn't ready for this, and he looks a bit taken aback and looks at his friends.
Cynric steps forward, like inclination of the head slightly, to acknowledge that he's speaking now and in the presence of royalty. We would not only use dwarven lives. Humans would fight beside you, perhaps other allies besides that. If
what
we
other
understand
allies? Who is with you?
the men of Arnor and some elves of Rivendell, and perhaps further afield.
He like leans back in his throne, and he like looks to the blue man next to him, and he kind of like beckons him over, and they have this little whispered conversation.
We all would stand, and we would see prosper with the fall of the orcs. Your concern for dwarven lives when so few dwarven children are conceived. If you had your home back, both of your homes, surely dwarven lives could prosper and once again bring new life to your people. More holds, more wealth, more dwarves.
Do you think, this blue man steps forward, do you think that it was orcs that pushed the dwarves from their home? Do you think that's all it took?
I am not so naive. We have fought worse. We've fought Numenorians. We've fought wraiths. I have even stared into the eye of the Dark Lord himself. We've slayed warg kings, clashed with the Witch King. Not just mere orcs. But we do not come unprepared.
Perhaps you have. Or perhaps not. That is what I would say if I were standing where you are.
If it's our grit, if it is our mettle that you wish to be convinced of, then perhaps this will suffice. And Faroth reaches into his cloak and he pulls forth the letter that was presented to him on the time of Nar's demise. One of your kin. You may not have known him, but I'm certain he would have known you. And I assure you, this is the mightiest dwarf I've ever encountered. And he presses the envelope forward, but he only takes a few steps towards this throne. He waits to see what they say.
The man in blue takes some steps slowly down the stairs, and there's like this gung, every time his staff gung, hits the stairs as he comes down. He walks over to you. He's quite a bit taller than you, and you're not short. He's unusually tall, very, very thin. And he reaches out. The smell of like perfume, of like sandalwood and stuff comes off him very strongly. Like pulls out this hand and takes the letter.
Actually, as he takes the letter, Faroth is going to do that thing where he holds it for a bit and makes sure he has eye contact, then he lets go.
So this man is tanned, definitely dark, but his eyes are like icy blue, and you can see that now when you are looking into them unexpectedly. He looks back at you and he takes it and walks away back up to the side of the throne. He begins to read. And then he hands it to Thorin, and Thorin reads it. And he like folds it and puts it on the side of his the armrest of his throne. And he beckons him over again. They have a quick little whispered sort of chat. And it's strange because it's silent in this hall, but there's no sound coming from those whispers. You would think that you'd be able to hear at least sort of, but there is no sound. And Thorin says, "Nar, Ironfoot. He's known to me, actually. He's one of our people. Likeable sort, actually. But your metal is not the only thing in question here. There are but 4 of you. There are thousands, maybe millions of orcs in Gundabad. And darker things still. I cannot send my people there to die in droves. I will not do it."
You must. Forgive my brashness, but what we speak of, it is something that cannot be ignored. We have traveled the length of Middle-earth to spread the message that all must stand or all will fall. And your kind are no different in this regard.
What hope do you think you have against the Dark Lord?
Silence, blue man, whilst kings are speaking. Let your betters speak.
He turns to look at you, Baragond, and there's like a sort of dull sort of that you can hear. Just for a moment. He seems bigger. There's a sort of darkening and then he smiles. A king. You are a king.
I turn to look at Faroth, indicating with my sort of body language and my things that it's not me, it's Faroth that I can consider a king.
What king are you? Forgive me, but I have seen many kings in my life, and you do not have the bearing of one. Thorin here. He has the bearing of a king. No? You can see it.
Do the Blue Mountains echo with the voice of a blue man, or do the dwarves speak here and rule? We have not come here to babble with some foreigner, but to speak with Thorin, the rightful ruler.
This man has been a great boon to me. He helped our people when no one else would. When we left Erebor, and the fire, and the death, and the ruination of my people, and we had nothing. And the elves looked away, and we passed near Gondor, and they looked away, and Rohan looked away. All of them, not a care for the suffering of my people. But this man, he helped us when no one else would.
And does this man, pray, have a name, Thorin Oakenshield?
I'm told he has many names.
Mm-hmm. Are we getting like a familiar kind of feeling from this dude?
Familiar how?
One of
In
wizardry.
that kind of aura, yeah, essentially. Yeah, I don't want to be so upfront about it, but yeah, wizardry, essentially.
Sorcery, maybe, or like magic, possibly. Because wizardry is quite specific. Maybe you think that.
Okay.
Maybe you think he's like a magician from the East. You know, there's rumors that they have all sorts of freaks and, you know, fire worshippers and snake eaters in that part of the world.
Varel's under the assumption at this point, and I won't correct it because I don't want to mess a game, but he's going to cast his mind back to a time when Gandalf was telling them about the wizards and about two blue wizards. And he looks upon this blue robe and these blue eyes, and he struggles not to jump to a conclusion. But instead he says, there must be something. There must be something to convince you of our plight. Surely you must see the folly in not acting at all.
And he's thinking, Thorin, you can see that he's like squinting and he's like thinking and he's kind of shaking his head and he rubs his hand over his face. You seek to have the name Thorin and the line of Durin the Deathless vanish. That's what it is. What other schemes have you in place? At this very moment, does a similar gathering of knaves and contemptible fools stand groveling before Dane Ironfoot, working to see the greatest line of the dwarves fall to ruin? Yes, my lord, I am certain of it.
Look confused slightly towards Fareth and back.
What hope can you have against the Dark Lord? 10 years Barad-dûr was besieged. And only then, when the Dark Lord came out himself. And the slaughter of many of your heroes was the ring removed. Do you think you can besiege Barad-dûr for 10 years? Gundabad?
The ring that you speak of is not in the possession of the Dark Lord. If it was, it would already be over.
A surprised look crosses over Bord's face, and he looks to Faroth, eyes wide, and to his other companions as he realizes the stakes of where he's landed and where he wonders for a moment what madness led him here, or drove him, rather.
You know there are tidings that the Dark Lord has returned. but yet he is not with it, seemingly without corporeal form. He still needs to gain his strength. This is the time that we should strike to see that weakened. If we can cleanse the north of the orcs, of the wargs, of the threats, we can see a time of prosperity, time of safety, that perhaps no man, but or dwarf or even elf has known. The north would be safe and secure. From there, we can push over the Misty Mountains towards Erebor, towards the fortress of Dol Guldur, even onwards from that. We would not face the evil incarnate that killed all of those heroes. We'd face lesser evils, still grand, but not as grand. All of your dwarven brethren have agreed with price, agree with terms, but only agreed to go together. They see the prosperity, the future of the dwarven kind. We offer you to unite with your brethren, to unite with the men of the north, to bring in that age. You would have your home, you would have your wealth, you would have artifacts lost to you, a birthplace recovered. We are not one of many processions. We are not one seeking the downfall of all of dwarven kind. We have fought our way across the entirety of Middle-earth to bring you this message, to bring every people this message. And though it is a difficult message to swallow, it is one many have already taken on the burden of.
And what price did you offer then to the Firebeards, to the Broadbeams? What was promised to them?
The king wished Gundabad, and he can give it back its true name. The Broadbeams wished trade with all of those nations that would make borders safe and caravans safer, so they could trade with the likes of men and elves, unhindered and unmolested, and bring in riches that they could not know in this current state. But they see the future, they see the profit, they are willing to try. And to you we offer Erebor. We would take those armies and we would continue that march until we see all of evil vanquished.
Why would they continue? Why would the Firebeards, having gained Gundabad, not simply stay there? Why would these armies that you have materialized from nowhere, why would they do as you say? The concern is the destruction of the Dark Lord, and not the reclamation of dwarven homes.
They are both one and the same, and your dwarven brethren hold by their contract. That is what they respect, their own word, not our word.
And make no mistake, Thorin. And I would like to preface this by stating that this is not a threat, but the rest of your kind are keen with these terms. Would you be the one to sit and do nothing whilst the rest of dwarven kind claim victory, claim riches, And they say Erebor has been quiet for some time. Would you be willing to remain here whilst the rest of your people march on the Lonely Mountain? Who knows what they will claim for themselves?
You can see that he's like grinding his teeth. That sounds like a threat to me. That is my home. That is where I come from, and my father and my father's father, all the way back to the first dwarves. They have no right. You have no right to march on Erebor. It is mine.
Then unite with us and we will help you.
The man in blue leans down to whisper in his ear again.
Bord scoffs, and it reverberates through the room. This place is not as welcoming as the host of Thranduil, who escorted him west of the Misty Mountains to be what he thought might just be a bodyguard for someone who he'd quickly learn was a king in his own right. The words, "What's in it for me?" still ring through his ears. It's mine. He glances to everyone, not just the tall man, and Bord does stand as tall as he can. His shoulders are back, and he looks to Thorin, and he also looks to the third dwarf who's sitting near the throne, though he wouldn't know who he was. And he says, after a long pause, after scoffing, he says, "What of Moria? You say the elves abandoned you. You say Gondor abandoned you. You say Rohan abandoned you. You say you couldn't come up with 9 little hobbits to come with you. But yet, to reclaim what is yours." And he lets that word try to reverberate a little more. "Where I come from, we take what is ours." And he just lets that sit.
What is mine is guarded by a beast, the likes of which you have never seen, the likes of which your worst nightmares could not conjure up. And Moria has fallen.
He would look surprised. I imagine multiple people might.
Yes. A sad day. Something from the depths arose. Moria is a tomb now.
How came you by this news?
I know many things.
Farroth is beginning to get impatient. Diplomacy is something that he is still relatively new to. And he looks down at his feet and then he looks up and he says, "What would your price be if such a sum exists at all?"
Erebor is not part of the price. It is mine by right, and so it will not be a chip in this game. It belongs to me already.
It belongs to Smorg.
He stands up from the throne and he like picks up this goblet and he throws it at you, Baragon. Silence!
Yeah, it hits. Baragon catches it, but is winded by it and falls into silence with his head down. He's said more than he wanted to say.
That worm, that thing, does not own Erebor. It's mine. And it will die. And I will make such things from its scales and its bones. Mine.
How's the blue man reacting as he's saying this?
He has a smile on his face pretty much throughout this conversation, apart from the one time. It's not like a shit-eating smile. It's more like a sort of calm, sort of pleasant. If you didn't know or didn't feel like he was being, like he was undermining you, you would think, oh, that's just a guy who's, fairly cheery.
Mm-hmm. So we can't really read anything. Okay. But he's urbane. Okay.
Yeah. King Thorin is right. Erebor is his. It is his birthright, and you cannot offer it to him as some sort of prize.
But we offer you a solution, and yet you turn it away. You said yourself, the number of the dwarves is lingering. Each day. And yet we present you with the option of an alliance. The likes that hasn't been seen in this age. Why would you turn that away?
So many turned away from me and my people in time of need. And now you need, and I turn away.
It is a surprise to me. Lord, is he a lord, just so I know that I'm addressing him correctly, Lloyd?
It's confusing.
Sure.
I think he thinks he's a king,
Okay. I'll just call him Thorin. It is a surprise to me that one heralded as a staunch defender would lower his guard so easily. You've allowed greed and revenge to dominate your thoughts. And now you sit here with honeyed words being dripped into your ear. And you refuse to see sense. I was not lying when I said that your people will march without you, if needs be. Would you let them do that alone?
My people are in this hall, are in this castle. Those are my people. And they will do as I command, and nothing else.
This is getting us nowhere. Farrell looks to his friends. Just sort of frustration burning in his eyes.
It's him, Board says. The days being underground, getting to him. He actually steps forward, staring at the man in blue. And I imagine maybe there are some guards on the edges that kind of step a little bit forward, and everyone's a little bit more on edge. May takes one step forward. It's the honeyed words. I don't imagine we actually have our weapons on us, do we? I'm sure we probably turned them over to some sort of guards. Anyone?
I think that was the case in all of the dwarven holds you went to.
Can I look at Arlen's chair that we haven't been introduced? Like, what has his consensus been that I can read from him?
He looks afraid. He looks pretty horrified, actually, at this situation. He hasn't spoken, and you feel like that he's been told not to many times. But he kind of like looks, and he like you. I guess you would have seen a few times where the offer was made that his eyebrows would kind of like shoot up, hopefully, and then like he would frown again when Thorin knocked it away again and again.
Faroth didn't want to jump to conclusions, but there is something in his heart that is telling him that there might be truth to Bord's words. And he takes a step to stand so he is shoulder to shoulder with the tall man. And he says, "Is this stranger, this man with many names, yet remains unintroduced, the sole counsel in this hall?" And his eyes flick ever so slightly to Balin and then back to Thorin.
I take counsel from a great many people. I have family here. And they always guide me. But I have found that this man is wise. And he knows things that no one else knows. And the man sort of like inclines his head.
How does he come across this information? What power does he hold?
I do not know, but he has always been right.
Or has he already always made it so?
What do you mean?
You trust this man's information when it cannot be proofed. He seems to get it from sources that you cannot replicate, that your other counselors cannot replicate. If all the sources of the dwarves cannot do what he does, where does he get his information from? How does he get it? There are a great many spies to those who can use them.
I speak many languages, and among them the language of birds, of rats, of animals. And they come to me, and they tell me what is afoot in this kingdom, and others.
Then what would your birds and your rats say the best course of action for Thorin and his people? If not to join with us, then what?
As you say, the Dark Lord is defeated. He lingers, broken, cannot take form. There is something that dwells in Gundabad, something ancient, something terrible. Something beyond the ability of armies to destroy. And you would go and wake that thing. That thing that drove out the dwarves from their home. A thing so dreadful that I would not whisper its name to you even now, so far from Gundabad. There's no way to save that place. To wash away the millennia of evil that has stained its once great halls. And not with all of the dwarves in Middle-earth, not with all of the men could you do this. And such seems to be the fate of all dwarven halls. That people linger, and Thorin knows this.
You didn't answer my question. What do you intend to do? Remain here and do nothing?
To remain here is not to do nothing. It is to stop you from waking that terrible thing. Stop you shaking the hornet's nest.
So this is the wisdom that this blue man brings you. The wisdom to accept your fate, to linger in this mouldering hall when we offer you a chance to retake Erebor, when we offer you our aid in retaking Erebor. And yet you prefer to listen to this blue-skinned sorcerer from the east. I have heard of their kind, and he's totally bullshitting here, but he has heard a snippet of information because he hears all sorts of snippets of information. I've heard of these blue-skinned sorcerers and that how they lust after the Arkenstone of Erebor and plot to take it for themselves. I think you are being deceived, Thorin, son of Thrain.
Thorin turns to look at the blue man. Thorin, I have no desire for the Arkenstone. It is just a stone. But Thorin seems angry. At even the mention of it, you can see his fist sort of clench and he grinds his teeth again.
My friend here brings up an interesting point. And it is the first time that I've seen your advisor not smile.
Well, is it true? You're not smiling, Morinitar. And the way the guy is not smiling. He's got this face on him of being one-upped. And his eyes shift from Thorin to you and back to Thorin. I have been ever loyal to you, Thorin. I have guided you and your people across Middle-earth, helped you build this hall, kept you safe from danger. And now these people come here and they make accusations against me, and immediately you believe them. But Thorin continues to look angrily at him. He's kind of breathing heavily, his fists are clenching. We'll take Erebor, and the Arkenstone will be mine. My price will be the rebuilding of Dale. Your army will see to that. Thorin, you cannot. This is not wise. They will awake the terrible thing that dwells within Gundabad. Silence!
Fareth's eyebrows have risen to a point that he did not think possible. This came out of left field. Baragon's words have clearly shaken the grip of this man's counsel. So immediately, Fareth says, "It will be done, Thorin. Together we will rebuild this world, not just Dale. You have my word."
And Baragon's eyes are sort of flicking around the room, looking to see if there's any painting, any wall hanging, or anything that shows an image of the legendary Arkenstone.
There is pretty prominently behind the throne. There's this image of Thror, which is Thrain's dad, I think. He's holding it up above him.
Without trying to sort of make it too obvious, but you know what he's like. He'll be lusting after that.
The stone and Erebor and the rebuilding of Dale. And a guarantee from the others that when I take the Arkenstone and Erebor is mine once again, that they will recognize me as king under the mountain.
It shall be done. Fareth promises.
Swear it.
Sure is that.
We cannot speak for dwarves, but we shall do what we can.
Do we not carry the contract as it's slowly been, added to, or the different contracts?
Yeah, so we can just write it into the contract, can't we?
Yeah, it was on the proviso that all the dwarves get their part in the contract. So whoever, Cineric, Baragond, or something, I'll pull the contract free and.
I think Baragon is the most sort of writer-ish of the people left, so I think Baragon would, take it and write down the details.
The blue man is horrified. He's looking at this. He's still got a smile on his face, but you can see that his brows are knitted, which is the most dramatic sort of change to his face that you've seen. He says, "Thorin, I cannot let you do this. It's madness." And Thorin says, "I've had enough of your," and he bangs the staff on the ground. And there's this that goes out. And Thorin blinks. He scratches the back of his head. And for the rest of you, it was this blinding, sort of very brief sort of light, bright white. I feel unwell. Dungeons, take them. And he looks at the blue man and he kind of nods. Dungeons, take them to the dungeons. And he sits back on his throne kind of weakly. And these guards that were statues basically just present these long spears.
Baragon immediately launches himself and takes a flying leap at the blue man's staff to try and break the staff.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah!
Okay, let's roll initiative.
Oh my god.
Awesome.
Oh, we definitely don't have our weapons.
I'm presuming not.
I think you probably are able to keep daggers and whatnot, but you wouldn't have your your axes and your swords and stuff,
All right.
Oh.
Told you to take the wizard's staff. Oh dear.
What did you get,
what I
Dan?
wanted.
14.
What's your dex, mate?
Imagine yours is higher, Farah.
I think it is. Yes, mine's probably is higher, I'm guessing.
Mine's 2.
Yeah, mine's higher. That's fine.
I'm a strength-based dude.
So I will let you make that surprise attack, Baragond, because no one was expecting it. And then we'll go into initiative.
Okay.
I can hear the wheels turning.
It's just one of my powers. It's in his hands, isn't it?
It's in his right hand, yeah. He just like poof, cracked it into the floor.
Okay, so I'm basically just attacking him with advantage. I'm just trying to break the. I'm just attacking this staff and trying to get it out of his hand.
Sure. So you can attack his hand. I could say that you could make an attack with or normally because you have advantage against his hand, like a cold shot kind of thing. And if you do over whatever amount I decide, he'll like drop it.
Sorry, I muted myself. I hit an armor class of 22, and if it was a surprise attack, I get my sneak bonus.
Yep, definitely.
So, or do I? Would I on an unarmed attack?
Oh, you don't have a weapon.
I think it has to be a
Actually,
regular
no.
finesse.
I think, but I
You
don't
said
know.
you had dagger, so
I've got one of the Middle Earth sneak attacks. I'll just read it to you. Where is it? When I make a sneak attack in melee combat, instead of inflicting extra damage, you may instead successfully perform a dexterity sleight of hand check on your opponent. You still do regular damage as normal if you wish. In addition to normal uses of sleight of hand, this feature enables you to take any weapon that your opponent that are on your opponent's person, but they are not currently wielding. It depends whether he's actually sort of in surprise wielding the thing, or whether I can sort of snatch it from him using dexterity.
So I don't think he's holding it in two hands, which I would consider it to be wielded that way. He's not like he's holding it because he banged it against the floor. I think I'll allow it. You can make that sleight of hand.
Okay. So a sleight of hand roll.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it said, right?
It doesn't say make a sleight of hand roll. It just says it's instead of my sneak attack. If my attack does damage, I can instead do a.
Yep, that's fine. So instead of doing the bonus sneak attack damage, you take the weapon.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So then, what's the normal damage?
It'd be 1.
1. Okay.
Actually, modified by my strength to 0. I don't know if you can do that.
All right. So you spring forward, and maybe there's just like a sort of chop to like the forearm. His hand spasms, and the staff is let go for a moment, and it clatters to the floor once before it bounces, and you catch it. Do you want to catch it?
As my with my sort of free hand, I'll just be in between it and the blue sorcerer or whatever, and kick it towards my companion, saying, kick it towards Board, who's the biggest of them, saying, break it!
All right, so that happens in this blur, and it comes around to him, and his eyes are wide in shock, as are Thorin's, as are the guards. They were not expecting this at all. He kind of like turns, and he like reaches and pulls that curved sword from his belt.
Oh shit!
And it's beautiful. You can see that like the hilt is in the shape of like a dragon's head. It's this long, sort of curved, sort of scimitar blade, and an ivory hilt. Sorry, the crossguard is the dragon, not the hilt. And he lifts it up and slashes towards you. Okay, 16. Does that hit?
Me?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Oh no, it doesn't. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. 16 does.
Okay, it'll be 11 from that.
Okay, with my I use an uncanny dodge to miss the worst of it.
So he kind of like slashes out sort of reflexively, and then he points his hand towards you, and he like begins to incant something. You can hear it like echoing through the hall. This like loud, impossibly loud actually. And then like he finishes it, and there's this force. Need you to make a wisdom save, please.
Oh, my favorite. 14? Probably not good enough.
Not going to do it, no. You'll take 14 force damage, and you're flung from where you are 10 feet into the air and 20 feet back. And you like basically collide with one of these tapestries, and it comes pulling down with you as you like clatter onto the ground. And he like turns, and his eyes are just like locked on the staff. And there's a look of maybe not fear, but worry on his face that it's landed next to this enormous giant man. And he doesn't think he's going to get there on time. He moves in that direction. So he's near you, but out of actions. Faroth, your turn.
And as this man moves towards the star, Faroth is going to just try and collide into this individual. He knows that the opportunity to stop this before it escalates to them fighting the Royal Guard and then all of the dwarves in this place, there's only a narrow window in which they have to stop this. So he is, first of all, just going to try and slam himself into this dude and grapple him with an athletics check, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Let me see. Come on, baby. Oh, okay, that's not so bad. That's 15, 16, 17, 18. 18.
Okay, he got a 14, so you haven't grappled.
So with that, I'm going to say he runs into him and he palms a dagger. And he slams into this guy, grabbing him so his hand is firmly clamped over this individual's mouth. And he puts a dagger that is in his hand to his throat. And he says, "Careful, sorcerer. Whatever honeyed words that come from your mouth will indeed be your last. Call them off." And he is basically holding this dude at knife point, letting the Royal Guard see what he has done.
Very nice. Cynric.
Do I have, like, my shield still?
I think you'd have the shield. I didn't be like wearing on your back, I would imagine.
Yeah. Any of these royal guards have ranged weapons? Or...
No, they all have the same. They've got this big, thick sort of, I mean, it's a terror shield for a dwarf. They're all armored from head to toe. There's not a single piece of skin showing.
Sure.
And they have these like long bladed spears.
I imagine if I look to the dwarf on the chair, it's going to be mostly shock at this point.
Absolutely, yeah.
He is going to like draw the shield as his main action and try like cover Board as best he can from any encroaching Royal Guardsman. But before he goes to Board side, like he's going to like reach out a hand to the guy he doesn't know is called Balin, and just say, "Dwarf, please. Your king is ensorcelled. You know this to be true. Our message, it must get through to him." And I'm just going to try and like implore the guy to do something. Like he might have the power to stop the guards or talk to Balin or something like that. And then I'm going to like, once that's done, I'll like jump back to try and shield Board from oncoming dwarves.
Excellent. Balin will stand as if like broken from a spell himself, and he like sees the opportunity. He looks around wildly. Back! Stay back! They can save him. And the guards like they're kind of like standing in like a standard sort of dwarf like shunk shunk, just like ready in this like perfect formation. But you can see that one of them right on the end kind of like turns his head ever so slightly to look at Balin and like at the other dwarves in the formation, and then looks back out, and then that kind of ripples through, and they all kind of like look. You don't know how much it's affected them, but they've heard it. Board
staring down one of the dwarves in the formation, who has looked, wary for just a moment and back, but he will go for the staff. How is it? I mean, do I have to dive for it? Do you think he can pick it up softly? And does he see? I guess if he could, he would pick it up softly, as if like, hey, this isn't a fight here, and to see if the guards would allow him to.
Yeah, so it's Beregond has kicked it towards you. It's probably maybe 3 feet away from where you're standing, so you can literally walk over and pick it up.
And he does so, and the hardest surface is probably a big stone column, and he will just smash it against it. What's that? Before
that happens, you touch it, you pick it up, and there's a this flash, and you can see fire and an eye. And insanity just
Board flies away from it. He stumbles away from it at first. He the smirk on his face fades into horror, and drool drips down his beard for a moment as his eyes wide face the ceiling. He falls backwards.
You can just hear this like echoing, like, I see you.
He's writhing and he's grabbing his head, and he is making sounds he's never made before.
Yep, there's like this black speech echoing through your mind, and even those of you standing near the staff, you can almost hear this like snake-like hissing or some sort of black speech emanating from it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and then he would try to get out of that, but I imagine that'll be next when he can when he can do another turn.
The Royal Guards stand confused. They look at Thorin. And Thorin is like sitting on the chair. He looks ill, like very, very pale. He's got his like face, his hand over his face, almost shaking, too weak to do anything. And so they see Balin, who's like frantically like, get away, don't do it, give them time. And they roll a dice to decide what they're going to do. Balin says, this is our chance. For years, he's been ensorcelled by this thing. Stand down. And there's a long moment where the Royal Guard do nothing, and one of them, like, pulls his spear upwards. And maybe it's just like they're so drilled that they do things in unison, but the rest of them do it half a second later, and they kind of stand rather than advancing. Beregond.
You said Beregond got sort of blown 20 feet away and up into the sort of landed on a wall next to a tapestry and then was sliding down. Can as my bonus action and thing in my round, I have used my elven cloak, I think it is, that gives me the climb and
shoes,
but
yep.
still be on the wall. So
Yep.
I'm sort of still hanging onto the wall. I look round. I look round the place for anything, for the heaviest, highest thing I can see on the roof, or on one of the walls or on the roof, and I climb to that and just, with all my strength, sort of throw it in the direction and try and make it land on the staff. Just catapult myself and whatever's the heaviest thing in the room in the direction of the staff to hope that momentum and things break the staff.
I absolutely love it. Yeah. So the ceiling is quite a way up. In typical dwarf fashion, they build their rooms taller than humans do for some reason, just like enormous. And so the actual ceiling is maybe 70 feet up from where you are. But you can see that hanging from it, there are like 3 big chandeliers, but also about halfway up, there's like these the heads of these statues. There's some freestanding statues of various dwarves, Thror and Thrain, and all the way back, that are kind of standing. They look fairly solid, but maybe you think if you swung at them hard enough, you'd be able to knock them over. Other than that, you could climb all the way up and like disconnect one of the chandeliers that are lighting the room.
Are there any sort of ropes holding the chandeliers to the ceiling that I can get to before going all the way up to the ceiling? I mean, are there any sort of winches to get them up and down?
Yeah, there would have to be, yes.
Yep. So I'll presume I'll just climb up to the first rope and cut through that with my dagger. And, well, not the first one I can see, the one that's closest to... the one that's closest to being above the staff, and then I'll try and basically, if it's not going to fall exactly on where the staff is, I'm going to go up with a rope and then try and time it in such a way that I jump from the rope onto the falling chandelier so it does land on the staff. That's my... I don't know whether that would be acrobatics or whatever I'm trying, but it's something.
If it wasn't Beregond, I would say there's no possible way, but he's done crazier things in his time. I think we will call that... we'll call it an acrobatics check, and let's just call it acrobatics.
Okay.
This is the part when Legolas boards down the stairs. Like, this is that
Up
moment.
the stairs.
Yeah.
Did I have inspiration? I don't think I did. So no, I'll have failed on that one.
You said something rad to Thorin earlier, so you should have it. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, every border belongs to Smog. That's what it was. Yep. There's inspiration for that for sure.
I would have given it to him for that.
It
The
doesn't
dwarves are all
help.
blue
I
mountains.
get a total of 11, 14.
Okay, so you kind of, I guess you would see it, and maybe the rest of you are used to this because you know that Beregond has these shoes, these boots from Thranduil. I guess Board is not in a position to look though. But you would see Beregond like scuttling across the wall, like climbing with incredible ease to the point where the chandelier winch is. He would like slice it or like untie it. And as it begins to fall, he like leaps from the wall and kind of like bodily smashes his shoulder into the side of the chandelier. It knocks it a little bit off course. Not a perfect landing for you nor the chandelier. There's a huge sort of crash. I will say that Board, you'll need to make a dex save with disadvantage as you're writhing in terror from the Dark Lord.
I took my turn to defend him. Do I get a chance to shove him out of the way?
Yep, I will allow that.
Okay. Does that make him not with advantage, or?
You can use your reaction to do an athletics to push him out of the way.
Okay.
Oh man, but I think that would put Cineric in harm's way as well, don't you think?
Potentially put him in danger, yeah.
Possibly, but then he's trying. I said I was going to try and save you or defend you. Natural motherfucking 20. Screw you, don't doubt Cedric. He
There's
will
something
save
so
your
wonderful
life.
about hearing you say motherfucking, Dan. It's just like not natural and it's great. Okay, so all at once, and then you can see it coming down, and Bord is like writhing like in a fetal position on the ground, just like something has terrified him beyond anything you can imagine. Maybe actually, Cineric, you might have an idea of what it is because you've been through it. And you can see him writhing, and the chandelier falling, and Baragon falling right next to the chandelier. And you tell me how you do it, because it's going to be amazing.
And am I presuming I don't get hit by this, or am I still in the way? Just so I can describe properly.
I think the shield breaks.
Oh, my poor shield. Okay. So I think my ears at the sound of the black speech, which I can understand, and that sense in the room, my adrenaline shoots up as I've had to fight this before. So I'm on high alert, and I'm looking towards Bord as he is barreling backwards, like falling over. And I like make a motion towards him, and then I hear the and like the cacophonous sound of this thing coming down from the top. And in a split second, I imagine like Bord is almost about to hit the floor, and I'm quite strong, but he's also quite huge. But I kind of shoulder bash him, maybe with the shield, to knock him off course and to send him sprawling into a different direction. And then, like, I am now underneath the chandelier. I kind of like look up and then do some sort of roll, as like the edge of the chandelier, one of its many rungs or something, smashes down, and I think like the shield is still on my arm, and it kind of like deflects most of the blow, fracturing the shield, and maybe, I don't know, ruining my arm to some degree, but a bit like Eowyn with the Witch King.
Exactly. Definitely have a dead arm at the least. Maybe there's a fracture in there, but you've saved Bord life, no question. And there's just this and this huge shower of dust that cracks out. And then once that dust is settled, there's like this as like a little bit of the chandelier, it like topples this way, and there's this crack, and you're all knocked to the ground. Everybody in the room, the dwarves in their huge heavy armor, is knocked to the ground. There's this explosion of like white light, and followed by this like scream whisper that like pierces through the place. And that's probably where we'll take a really quick break, because I need to use the little girl's room. The smoke, what do we call it? I'll go for a smoking wee.
You guys are so weird. I love it.
All right, take a quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Oh my god.
I swear I don't roll natural 20s until we really need them. Cedric.
Right, I'm back.
I don't know what it is about Cynric that when shit hits the fan, he rolls a 20. I could really use this in other games.
It's Sauron. Whenever Sauron is like directly involved, he just like brings it.
And I know this isn't really a swearing game, but I couldn't actually censor myself in time there.
Oh, it was perfect.
I could, yeah, honestly, really use that. There was a game I played earlier today that I could have really used a 20 when it needed to, but the dice didn't back me up. But this game, for some reason, the dice are there with me. It's such a pleasure.
He's inured to the Dark Lord's power.
Apparently, we will see.
Yeah.
What happens with that? But...
Oh, I'm guessing we're not. Are we out of combat, or?
You will be when we start again. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a shame.
I mean, there was the explosion of the staff.
Yes, everyone is knocked down to the ground, including yourself
and
Marinotar. When did you know that he was the Blue Wizard? Because I feel like there was definitely a moment. Was it the eyes, or was it?
It was just it was just a thought of mine, because it was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, he has a staff, and I was like, well, that's not that special. Lots of people can have a staff. And then you said blue rose, and then blue eyes, and then he had this weird kind of. Then we couldn't hear what they were saying, and I was like, this is weird. And I was like, hang on a bloody second. I
wanted it to be potentially possible that he was just a magi from the east, because I feel like there are those,
Sure.
But yeah, it was the blue. I think is a giveaway, but yeah,
I wasn't sure until like a second before combat started, and as soon as it started, I was like, yeah, it's definitely a blue wizard. And I was like, holy shit.
I thought, I didn't think it was necessary. I know I said wizardry as like a purpose, because we've been in the company of wizards before, and they have a certain intensity, which is why I said that. But I wasn't, like you said, it was very specific. I was wondering about magi or something magical was going on. Could have been the blue wizard. So I like how you've written it in.
It hadn't even crossed my mind.
Okay.
I mean, I did a bit of reading about them, and there's lots of things said about them, but some of them are like they failed their mission and started magical cults in the East, That's like one of the things that's said about them, and I was like, that would be interesting. And if they failed their mission, then they probably found a Sauron, and they would be his agents. And in this, Gandalf's not around, and Saruman is a good guy, so somebody's got to be the creepy wizard.
And that's just one of them.
Good call on taking that staff away. That would have been a really difficult encounter otherwise.
Take on a wizard with no weapons. I was expecting, the guards, and then Thorin. I was like, we're fighting two heroes.
Yeah.
And like all of the dwarves.
Okay, I think we're all back, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So there's just this, I guess, Saving Private Ryan-esque in your ear. From the shockwave, you feel kind of ill and nauseous, all of you. And some of the dwarven guards are actually throwing up from like the force and the shock, and also just like this awful feeling that like permeates the room. You can still kind of hear little whispers of black speech here and there, and it makes you feel disgusting, like raises your hackles. And there's just silence. The Blue Wizard seems to be unconscious. He's like lying there, and you can see that like as he has fallen, his like black beard has turned white and long and wispy, no longer like black and oily. And his skin has paled as well, so that he looks quite a lot like Gandalf, actually, a little bit taller. And there's silence until Thorin coughs. And he like stands kind of shakily from his throne. What? Marinotar? Who are you?
Aragon looks to Balin to see if, I mean, he doesn't know he's Balin, but the other dwarf or one of the dwarves to explain.
Yeah, Balin is old for a dwarf. white hair, white beard, and he like struggles to stand from that blow. And he makes his way over to Thorin. What? And he just like puts his hand on his shoulder, and he quietly explains to him. Well, the rest of you kind of gather yourselves, like what had transpired.
Faroth is sort of still clutching his chest from the impact of the staff breaking. He staggers to his feet and he looks down upon this fallen wizard. Does he appear to be stirring in any way like the rest of us are?
No, it seems like this explosion hurt him a lot more than it hurt you.
For good measure, Faroth takes the pommel of his dagger and he brings it down hard upon his head. Just bam! Just like this is one of the most dangerous men in Middle-earth, and he'll be damned if he's gonna like give this guy an inch. So he hits him with the butt of his dagger and then instantly turns to the royal guard and says, manacles as strong as you can, and something to put in his mouth as well. We cannot let him speak. We cannot let him see.
They look to Thorin and Balin and they nod, and they set about that.
I think Cynric like extricates himself from the worst of the dust and the rock. I imagine he might be still partially under, like one of the bands that didn't, fully impact with the floor and crush his legs or something, but he got out of the central column that might be propping this thing up. And he's sort of like pulling himself out with one arm, clutching the other to his chest. And he tries to like prop himself up. Maybe coughs ancient stone dust from his lungs. Bored? Bored. Trying to wipe it from his eyes.
The fires of the great eye turned to the waters of the Anduin. And then nothing. And then the sound. The high hum. The painful hiss that fills Bord's ears wakes him up into this blurry world. And he pulls himself to a stair and tries to stand up, but stumbles forward onto his knee. And then he hears his name, Bord. Bord. And he clears his eyes and looks to his friend and moves over as quickly as possible, though he's a mess in so many ways, an inexplicable mess. He goes to Cynric and kind of goes to your side. And he knows immediately. Cynric has seen the eye?
Yes, fought the eye and won.
Bord knows that you've seen the eye. Just like it's some sort of sixth sense, like it's some sort of just absolute knowledge he has just by looking at you. He knows that you have seen it, and he comes to help you, but just you being there helps him because he knows he's not the only one. He says your name back, Cynric. Cynric.
Yeah. I think he's with you by his side. He kind of props up against, probably really uncomfortably, against one of the twisted metal bands of this chandelier, and grabs the side of your arm or something. Glad to see you're okay.
And I imagine that you would know it too when you saw Bord. Like there was just something there that and Bord nods. And he's not entirely sure what okay means at this point, but he knows it starts by standing up, and so he pulls himself and you to our feet, and then looks to where Baragond is to see where he, what his situation looks like.
I stand heavily leaning against you, probably for a moment.
Yeah, I would be by your side. Is it something that wouldn't work? Is Cynric too hurt? Would I have to kind of stop and?
No, I think it's
Stay
my
down.
arm that's hurt, so he can stand like hanging off you to a degree. But
I
like,
got you.
I think he's still a
Maybe
bit
even
stunned.
maybe even it's a little too forceful, like a little uncomfortably forceful.
Probably. And I'll look to Baragond as well.
Baragond is just, I think, dazed, still sitting on the floor and vomiting from the. I think he was probably the closest to the staff, or one of the. He's pretty badly hit by the staff and by the blows he took, and he's just trembling on the floor, looking a bit out of it. But he looks up. He's watching. He's watching the dwarves a little bit warily. See how it progresses.
So Balan has finished.
And his eyes keep flicking back. Eyes involuntarily flick towards the Arkenstone every now and then. The image of the Arkenstone.
Thorin kind of moves shakily to the edge of his throne and then like walks down the stairs to where the rest of you are. And Balan's at his side. That sorcerer. I thought I was stronger than that. And he looks around the hall, which is kind of like dark and grim. This is not how I was taught to rule. This is not how I wanted to rule. And I'm sorry that you came here in such a sorry state and that you saw this hall in such a way.
His kind have walked this Middle Earth since it was young, Thorin. There would have been no knowing.
He reached out to us. He reached out to us when no one else would. He guided us all the way here and helped us build this place. He seemed like a friend.
It is the way of the shadow. It has many disguises. Seems even wizards are not safe from its grasp.
Not all that glitters is gold.
You're right. Balan told me of your quest. And of course, I will help. Of course. It's the right thing to do. It's the only thing to do.
You were not of your right mind when we were discussing the terms, Thorin. I will ensure that you have every right to look at the treaty as it stands at the moment. And I feel one part of you still remained in the discussion we had previously. And I swear that we will return your home to you.
Good. Then let it be so. We'll reclaim Gundabad, we'll reclaim Erebor, and rebuild Dale and the rest of this Middle Earth.
But before that, drink.
Please. And he like claps, and the dwarven guards who have like stumbled upwards and we're standing like in a sort of formation, they like relax and they kind of like step back to their places, and servants come in. One comes in, Balin whispers, and seconds later they come in with big tankards of dwarven ale on this table that they drag in and place. And Thorin stands at the top of it, with you standing around it, Balin at the other end. And he raises it.
Just does he notice that the cup that he threw at Beragond hasn't reappeared?
I don't think he would have, actually.
He might ask for it.
He's too pleased, I think, to have his faculties back. He doesn't notice it. He probably will notice it in 2 weeks when you're gone. He raises it and he says, "To the reforging of this Middle Earth and the reforging of my kingdom."
Cynric holds up a glass in his one good arm, or a tankard. Maybe his EO helm is like a little askew. I think on the table in front of him sits a small fragment of his shield that he pulled from the wreckage, and it's just like the horse's head, the white horse's head that you get on the Rohirrim shields. Part of this fractured wood, part of it painted, part of it wrenched and torn.
He can, Thorin can see you kind of like gazing at that sort of forlornly. We'll have that fixed for you. A new one made. And we drink to the kingdoms, yes. But I drink to you for taking me from that darkness and bringing me back. Thank you.
Beragond joins in, but he tries to move sort of to the most unobvious place in the celebrations that he can, hoping that he's worried that the cup he's got inside his tunic will sort of be remembered.
Faroth drinks, but not deeply. His intention with saying drink was to put the situation at ease, put their minds at ease. But Faroth is dwelling on the fact that that wizard's going to wake up and is going to have information that might be prudent for them to find out. So he is in fact steeling himself for the task ahead, which will likely be an interrogation of some type.
Yeah, that's on the cards, certainly. But Thorin doesn't seem to worry about it at the moment. You can see that there's like a joy in him to see all the colors. And, you know, as you're kind of drinking, the lanterns are lit and the room is much grander than it was before. Fires roaring and sort of like the old dusty curtains pulled aside to reveal colorful tapestries, and the place looks a lot warmer than it did previously. There's also guards have gone to the dungeons to like pull out the people who had been placed there while Thorin was indisposed. Like he had put merchants and things like that into the dungeons for daring to come to his realm, things like that. And he's like very jovial, very convivial. He's giving gifts to those people who he had imprisoned wrongly. And there's singing, of course, as it's dwarves. It's fairly pleasant overall. You can stay here as long as you wish. We'll have quarters made for you, and you can rest up.
There are merchants here who travel here. Do any of them travel down to Gondor?
Of course.
Then I would like to write a letter to my family and to the steward Denethor, who sent us on a mission, and my old captain Faramir, to report what's happened so far.
We'll see them delivered. So it continues festivities and happiness. Balin kind of makes his way around to each of you and like shakes your hand and thanks you. And you can see that it's more than thank you. His eyes are almost wet with tears, with joy, it seems.
When Balin approaches Bord, he sees Bord just kind of staring intently into this tankard of ale. By now, Bord has found a bench and found some place to rest and drink. But he sat there through all the toasts and all the raising of cups. He's just sat intently looking at this mug until now, when Balin speaks to him. Bord kind of snaps out of it, surprised, and raises his tankard to and says something stupid like, "To the dwarves."
Balin's of a keen mind, and I think he would recognize that something is not quite right. You're well?
Aye. He takes a drink.
I've never seen one of you before.
I don't think Bord understands exactly what he means, because, yeah.
I mean, no offense, of course. You're not a man of Gondor, nor a man of Rohan.
It occurs to Bord what Balin's talking about. He says, "No." And he laughs. And he kind of sits up a little bit taller. It's in his blood to do that. And he looks to Balin and says, looks to Thorin, "Master, he said Moria had fallen."
I don't know how true it is. The wizard said a lot of things, but he said that Moria had fallen, yes. That something came from below and destroyed it.
Bord would just look stunned. He's heard the tales, but he never could have thought it would have been this bad.
I don't know for certain. I need to find out. It's all of our homes. It's the greatest dwarven city there ever has been. But I don't know. If it's true, then so many of my kin. He looks down into his cup. This is grim talk. It's a time of celebration.
Bord stands and says, "Agreed." But and after a pause, he says, "To finding your homes."
To finding our homes.
And they drink. And Bord thinks of the eye.
So the celebrations go on for some time before a guard comes, and he says something to Thorin, and Thorin says something to Balin, and then Balin says, "He's woken up."
Then we must waste no time. Farroth is on his feet, and he says, "If it's all the same, Thorin, I would like my weapons returned to me for this discussion.
Of course. Yes. And he like kind of lazily waves a hand, and a guard runs off to get your various equipment.
And I'll come with you too, says Beregond.
Oh no. Oh no. Just don't be mentioning any dragons this time, Faroth mutters under his breath to Beregond, as he sort of straps his sword back onto his belt.
So the stuff is returned to you, and you're led down through Thorin's halls. I don't know how many dwarf halls you've been in. This is a small one by comparison, but still just enormous and cavernous. There are these stairways that kind of cut through the place, and as soon as you kind of leave the hall and enter into the cavern part of which is the largest part by far of the hold, there's just this almost deafening ringing of picks and hammers, and just of industry and flame and fire and just all sorts of industry everywhere you go. And you can hear also this sort of rumbling sort of dwarven work song that kind of you can hear different parts of it in different parts of the cavern as you move through it. These stairways that have no rails but are thousands of feet up, and very, very thin, probably quite frightening if you're not used to them. The dwarves seem to be not at all concerned. They move at like a brisk pace along these paths, but for you it's probably quite frightening. They have a lower center of gravity, maybe that's why. But you can see these drops beneath you that just go on into darkness. And you're brought down, and then you enter into this like huge forge area, and you can see there's like liquid, like lava or magma from the mountain, which is being used to forge weapons. These huge forges, and this is the least of the dwarven halls, probably. Still, the industry is baffling and amazing to look at. And you go deeper, further still, until you come to a point where the only light is the torches of the guards who are with you. Other than that, total blackness and almost total silence as well, which is kind of unnerving. As you go deeper and deeper, there's no sound of air, of rushing air. There's no sound of industry even anymore. There's just silence and darkness. You can hear the of torches and the steps, but that's about it. And they open, they come to this huge door, and there's a team of dwarves that work winches and things to open them outwards, and then another door similarly. This is the dungeon. Until finally you're brought before the cell. It's one of many, although the rest seem to be empty. Small, maybe 10 foot by 10 foot, just carved into the rock. There's a thick door of steel that has a small sort of slit. And the guard says, "Do you want to go in?" Or
Yes, it is time.
"If you need us, knock on the door." And he like, and there's all these different bits that he has to unlock before the door opens. Inside there's a single candle that's been lit and left for him so he doesn't go insane. But other than that, there's nothing. It's just this stone cell, black. And he's standing looking at the candle with his back to the door.
Faroth is going to walk in immediately, and he is going to look down upon this figure, and he waits until the rest of his friends are inside the room and the door closes before he says anything. Is he like manacled to the wall or something? Is he like...
Yes. Yep. So he's able to stand, but he has like manacles about both of his feet. And so he's not manacled to the wall, but his hands are tied and his feet are tied.
Okay. Faroth looks at him and he says, "Before we begin, I would like you to understand this. You have become very familiar with this place, I'm sure. But you will become familiar with it still. Shall we say a lot deeper? If you attempt any sorcery of any kind. I cannot claim to know the full extent of your abilities, Wanderer. But I know the extent of mine. How entrenched within the Dark Lord's plan are you?
Beregond takes some a mug of water or something, and then pulls the guy's gag down and gives him a little bit of water so he can. He's got some moisture in his mouth, so he can reply.
I am but a cog in the great wheel.
A cog, perhaps, but a significant one. Do not be too humble, wizard. Your kind are not numerous.
Do you know that I will live forever?
Oh, I'll make sure of that.
Do you know that being imprisoned here is a blink to me? Do you know that if I betrayed the Dark Lord, I would sooner sit in this cell?
Oh, you will live forever, wizard. And if you do not comply to our demands, and if you do not speak the truth, you shall go on throughout the ages without eyes, or ears, or a tongue. Choose your next words very carefully. What does he plan? What was his intention to send you here? Was it to stop Thorin committing to the war effort?
You make threats like an orc. Do you know that? To threaten to cut off my ears, take out my eyes. Perhaps it is you who I should have spoken to and not Thorin.
We have faced the shadow for a long time. And we have bandied words with dwarves and elves and men alike. But I understand you. I understand that you are a threat. One that mustn't be underestimated. So I do threaten you with the full extent of what I am capable of.
Bord's eyes shift to Feroth,
Yep.
and he looks surprised and kind of shocked.
Beregond's too.
Do it then. Do it, and the Dark Lord will know your name. He will remember you, and it will only be 10 steps before you fall to him. I can see it in you already. Mark on your soul.
Faroth looks down, and he can feel the gaze of his friends upon him, and for a moment he feels a slither of shame. And his hand goes towards his dagger. But then he stops and he says, "You are nothing like the wizards that I've met before. I wonder what must have happened to you that would have made you turn from your path?
I saw that there is only one inevitable end to this world. I saw that the Dark Lord cannot be defeated. He is too powerful, too great. And so the only option that remains is to join him. Gandalf, Saruman. Oh yes. And the other one. They do not know. They think they know. They think they know how dangerous the Dark Lord is. They think they know how powerful. They have no idea, no concept.
Farroth looks to his friends and then he looks back and he says, "You are not fit to speak the name of Gandalf. You are a disgrace to his kind, and you're a disgrace to the world that we all live in."
I agree. Lock him up down here forever. Never let him out. He's powerless without his staff.
No, but he's clever.
Was that like shaking? I imagine like everything around shakes. Yeah. Bord looks around surprised and then looks to the man with fury in his eyes. Surprise.
The staff is precious to me. But I am not powerless without it. If I wanted to, you would be dead.
You
Farroth
wanted
turns
to.
to the table and says, "Go on then."
I do not want it.
And why is that?
You are necessary, all of you. The Dark Lord knows this.
Don't feign that you intended to be brought here all this time, wizard.
No, I did not want to be here. But I do not want you dead.
Well, you see, that's a mistake. Because we stopped you and we're going to stop your master.
Yes. Maybe you think so.
You have an opportunity to make your continued existence more bearable. If you help us, you could do considerable good. If, as you say, the end is inevitable, then what have you got to lose?
I spent 1,000 years in the pits of Barad-dûr. There is no suffering you can inflict upon me that I have not suffered already.
Farroth looks at Baragond. To see what if he's reacting or if he's doing anything.
Baragond has sat down on the wizard's bunk, and he's just staring at the wizard with a look of curiosity, almost longing on his face. He knows how old this guy is, and you know how Baragond loves history, and is itching to ask him all sorts of questions about little insignificant details out of history and find out whether his little theories are correct. Whatever happened to the silver mirror of Athal Mirin and things like that. But at the moment he's just sitting there silently, biting his lip and waiting his turn. But he seems to have gone out of official mode and just be in Baragon treasure seeker mode at the moment.
What do you think it was that drove the dwarves from Gundabad? Do you think it was orcs? Do you think it was goblins?
If you know any better, wizard. We've heard that dark things dwell there, but always in hushed whispers.
How would they have kicked the dwarves out of there, sent them scurrying away from their home, their birthplace? How would they not have returned, all of them, to reclaim this place? Something keeps them away. Maybe they don't remember, but the tales are passed down.
And do you remember?
Maybe.
You're so eager to talk about it. It's not like you have anything else to do.
Valaraukar is what they call them.
Varoth tries to hide the confusion that flickers across his eyes. Can I make some kind of check? Can we all make a check to maybe see if we've heard that? Yeah, Shadow?
Yeah.
Spot on. Let's see what I've got in that.
Can I have the name in the chat while I roll my Shadow Law?
Yes, sir. 1 second.
Thank you.
Okay, come on. Yep, I don't know at all.
I got 16.
I roll a 2, which gives me a total of 5.
Okay, 16 is not enough either.
Okay.
Perhaps you know them by a different name. Soldiers, generals of the First and Second Age. Servants of Morgoth.
Now that's a name Faroth does recognize. And they dwell there still?
They are deathless. Like I. Or like your Gandalf. Oh, wait.
Faroth kicks him in the face.
He spits at a tooth. I see. So it's true.
As I said, you're not fit to say that name. Don't make the same mistake again. These generals, how can they be stopped?
They cannot. Not by one such as you. They are creatures like me. More powerful, perhaps.
We faced your kind, or similar, before. In varying shades.
This is not... It's not a man. A creature of fire. And of shadow. Huge. Winged. It is what awoke beneath Moria, and it is what dwells within Gundabad.
Maybe it's Faroth's imagination, maybe it's the chisels all throughout the mines, but for a second he thinks he hears the sound of drums. He looks to his companions. He feels his line of questioning is taking them to a place that he did not expect, and to a very worrying place. And yeah, he looks over at Bord, see what he's making of all of this.
Bord is looking intently at this man, and then he catches your eye, and then looks back and forth, and after the double take says, "He speaks the truth." Moria is fallen. And it would have taken far more than orcs and goblins to do that.
The servants of the Dark Lord are awakening. Ancient evils, long resting. He gathers his power to him. There is no hope for you. Submit. Swear allegiance to the Dark Lord. And you could be lords in your own right. You wish to be king again, you will be king. Of all Middle-earth. If you but kneel.
I wish only to liberate my kind and everyone else's from the hatred that your Dark Lord insists on spreading across this land.
So liberate them from the war. The death, the destruction that will follow. Make the hard choice to save your people, or millions of them will die.
The hard choice. Do not speak to me of the hard choice, wizard. You gave in, not us.
I made the only decision that I could make, that anyone could make.
You made it under 1,000 years of torture. Not your own decision. These are not your own views, opinions. I refuse to believe that you had the same going in to those pits as you did coming out. He's broken you. You are nothing but a puppet.
Nothing but a puppet. Maybe. But I live. And I will live after the fire comes. And after the destruction comes. And you will not.
You've seen them. Not just these Varuka that you speak of, but the 9. That is a fate that could befall you. Is that something you really want? Is that really living forever? It's forever, but it's not living.
The 9 were men once. Twisted by Ring's power. I was never a man. I will remain as I am.
Are you sure about that?
Not sure.
He's speaking in tongues.
R2D2 has made an appearance.
Someone's doing a keyboard solo in this chat.
Avant-garde kind of German expression music coming through. Faroth is going to look at Cyneric, and he kind of he's thinking to himself, surely there must be something that we can learn from him. We just need the right angle.
I mean, normally I have some good ideas. You're dealing with a wizard who's been tortured for 1,000 years by a Dark Lord.
We can't really compete with that.
No, not really. I think, I mean, you've learned something, whether you can trust anything that comes out of his mouth or not. Cyneric, you don't see, I don't know, the light of reason. You don't see the willingness to talk with any and everyone that you've seen in every meeting with elves and men and dwarves and wizards before now. You don't see the light that he carries within him. You just see distrust. He looks on this creature with pity. He doesn't see anything useful coming from this wizard. He doesn't know if he can trust anything that he's already said. He wonders maybe the reason why he didn't want people to attack Gundabad was that there is something there of value to the Dark Lord. You can tell us stories, old man, of these mythic evils from the past. But no one here has seen them. Perhaps you tell us these so we would give up and avoid striking where you are weakest, striking where you hold your most precious desires.
Gundabad is one of countless fortresses of the Dark Lord. A big one, yes. An important one, certainly. But it is guarded by forces that you cannot comprehend. Attack it if you must. But it will only bring ruin to your people.
Is there a way inside? Is there a way inside that could be undetected, perhaps, to those lacking talents that you possess, perhaps?
Why would I tell you this?
As I said, you have nothing to lose. And everything to gain. I'm sure you can be made comfortable here.
I have everything to lose. If I tell you, he will know.
You have everything to lose if you don't.
Maybe you have never seen him. If you had, you would know. Or spoken with him. Felt the full force of his hate, of his majesty. I cannot betray him.
The eye has looked upon me and my friends. But he can be resisted. You stand before someone who has wizard, and he gestures to Cynric. What I'm speaking of is not impossible. If a simple horse lord from Rohan can, what's to say a wizard can't? And he gives Cynric like a look to say, I'm not belittling you here, I'm just trying to make a point to him.
Yeah, don't worry. Cynic rubbing his sore shoulder.
I see that you are trying. Noble, I'm sure. But it is too late. It is all in motion. There's nothing you can do. The end is coming. Shadow and fire. To cover the world. I am certain of it. I have seen it. He has shown me. I will not go against him.
Varoth gives the wizard a long look, and then he turns that gaze to his friends, and that expression reads thusly. That's all I've got.
Board believes he's been shown something as well, and he says, what has he shown you?
The end of all things.
How? How have you seen it?
He has powers. Dark powers. Sorcery beyond my ability.
And you fall and grovel to his feet and eat the scraps of his powers without any knowledge or assumption of what they are, what power they come from, they are lies. They speak to you in riddles, and they show you images that you cannot explain. You cannot explain.
I have seen what is to come, what will pass. The burning of Osgiliath and of Minas Tirith and of Lothlorien and every city, every holdfast of the people of Middle-earth.
I don't think Bord has the mental capacity to even process all of this, and he wants to shut down the part of himself that believes him, and so he goes to the door and actually or gate or I've forgotten what that portcullis or whatever. He's gonna go to leave.
Yeah, the doors would like open it and let you out.
Just before he does, as he passes by, with my good hand, I put a hand on his shoulder, still looking at the wizard, saying it to Bord. I say, but we do not believe what we see. He can show us whatever he wishes, but we know the truth. And like squeezes his shoulder and then like walks out with him.
And Bord will kind of do it under the guise that he's helping you out, and takes comfort in your words, most definitely, and is happy that he's leaving so he doesn't strangle this person.
Faroth, son of Fardred, the Lion of Anarion. Quite a grand name.
So they say.
Kingship in those veins. Made to lead. Think of what you could do. How powerful you could become.
Everything I need to know, everything I need to see is right before me. You speak of power. You are a wizard. Yet now you sit in a dwarven cell. There are some things that are greater than that. This courage and this hope and this friendship. And that is something that you've been denied for a long time, and I'm sorry. If you won't help us, then all that you remain as is a threat.
And so it comes. The ends justify the means, no? That's what you will tell yourself after you kill me. After you maim me, you will say, we removed him. He was a problem. He was a threat. He was evil. And maybe you will sleep.
I think you're a victim. Just like everyone else. But I'm not going to kill you. But I hear the dwarves are fine craftsmen. I know the cell is not enough. You've just demonstrated you shook the foundations of this place. But I wonder if you could shake Mithril so readily.
I suppose we shall see.
Yes, we shall. And Faroth turns and he walks out of the room.
And Beregond hurries up and follows after Faroth, but before actually going out of the room, he turns back to the blue wizard and says, just one final question. The crown of Menel Tarma, one of the three treasures of ancient Numenor. It was said that Ar-Mazarmar, when he rebelled against his father and fled to Umbar, he took it with him, and it still exists in the lands of the East. Have you seen it? Does it really exist?
I had a thirst for knowledge once. I see it in you. It does.
That's all I wanted to know. But tell me, what does it look like? And somebody will probably have to go back and grab Beragond eventually, because he stays there questioning the blue wizard.
And he would like enthusiastically like tell you in detail. And I guess you would see a measure of maybe his true self come out when he talks about this stuff. Like this is what he loves, it seems. But as kind of you're dragged out, he would say, he will fall. He will fall. And when it happens, you'll know that I warned you.
We are fighting to save these things from corruption, I say. You should join us again, I say to him, but then I close the door on him.
And he is in darkness with one candle as you make your way back up through the dwarven hold. It's a much shittier walk on the way up. Thousands of steps. Exhausting. The dwarves don't seem to be bothered by it, but for you it is arduous and really quite exhausting. So by the time that you make it back to the throne room, you are sweating and your legs are shaking. And Thorin says, well, did he reveal anything of use?
Yes, says Beragond, and starts speaking about all these lost treasures that he's heard about in the east.
Anything about the war?
He suggested that there were darker forces at work within Gundabad and indeed within Moria. He had been imprisoned within the depths of Barad-dûr for over 1,000 years. There's nothing that we, or indeed you, leader of the dwarfs, can do to him that has not been done by Sauron.
Well, we do not torture prisoners, even if they have fallen so far. We will keep him locked up here.
He has been corrupted by the shadow. You must be wary.
And he is powerful. Only your strongest cell, if it takes encasing him within Mithril, I would advise you do it. He cannot be allowed to walk Middle-earth again.
Would it not be easier to kill him? A mercy, even?
He's just a victim, Thorin. It just happens that what was done to him was a long time ago.
And so instead we let him rot in a cell.
Aye, instead we let him rot in a cell.
As you say. It sits ill with me.
And me.
I am deeply grateful to you for the service that you have done me, freeing me from his grasp.
We could set him free. Send him back as a failed servant of Sauron. See how Sauron treats. See the mercy that Sauron has for him.
He is powerful.
Perhaps you should hold him till this all is over. When there is no more Dark Lord, perhaps there is little threat. Maybe not say as a permanent residence, but a temporary measure.
Make no mistake, however, these are your halls, Thorin. And he is your prisoner. We have no right to dictate how you treat him. But I would urge you stay a weapon from him.
Sauron was a prisoner when he surrendered to the forces of Numenor, and that was when he caused their ruin. I say cast him out.
It will require a great deal of thought to leave him there in the dark forever. Cannot abide it. Maybe if this war is quick, but it seems unlikely, no?
That man has spent 1,000 years being tortured. This war will not last anywhere near that. I believe he can cope until we have seen victory. He did brag that sitting in this prison was a good alternative to the Dark Lord, and it would go by in a blink of an eye. He sees time differently to us. Where we see punishment, perhaps he sees a rest.
Perhaps. I've spoken with Balin and the rest of my family here, and we are ready to leave whenever you require us. I will send for representatives from the Firebeards and the Broadbeams, and we will discuss what's to be done. The sooner we can move, the better, I believe.
When the Dunedain have drawn up battle plans and begin to deploy, word will be sent to you.
Good.
We'll have to convene.
This force of yours, who will lead it?
Farrell doesn't say anything pointedly.
You are of a royal line, I say to Thorin. Can you not see royalty in other races too?
Which other races? You had mentioned, Balin tells me, that elves were coming.
A confident all races will stand beside us. Not in even number, but there will be representatives from all.
And who will lead this army? Will it be you? Will it be Elrond?
All of those who stand in front of you have led men, led elves, even. Perhaps it shall be a council of us all.
War is not a place for councils.
Who would you take your orders from? From us?
from you before I would take them from Elrond.
I thought as much. And maybe he will take him from us before he would you.
Good luck.
With your dwarven might behind us, we won't need it. He gives him a grin.
I'm too old for flattery, young man. But I see your point. Now, Balin tells me that you had made mention as well of elves in Forlinden. That was part of your plan, to go and speak with them. There is a way to get there. And if we're going to be spilling dwarven blood, the more we have of all races, the better, I think. We are not friendly with them. They're not hostile. But we can show you the path through the mountain. We'll get you there quicker.
Is this path dangerous, Thorin?
It's patrolled by our people. Most of it.
Very well.
So he kind of like takes that as a notification. He kind of stands up.
Most gracious of you.
I'll never be able to repay what you have done for me. Although maybe if we retake Erebor, he says with a smile. Nonetheless, I am grateful to you, and I call you friends for what you have done.
And I return that. Our friend, sadly he has passed. He would tell many stories of his kind, often with embellishment. But in this case, the tales of you stand true, Thorin. Thank you.
And while they're speaking and the attention is drawn over there, using sleight of hand, Beregond goes and slips the cup that he had in his belly. He slips it up to the edge of a table or onto a bench, so it's just he's not stealing it after all.
Inspiration. Almost unthinkable that Beregond would give something back that he had taken. So he says his goodbyes. There are handshakes. The contract is finished and drawn up. The terms don't counteract each other too dramatically. There is a problem technically between Firebeards and Broadbeams. But Thorin wants Erebor. He wants Dale rebuilt. He wants that section of the world, which is not going to interfere with what happens here or in Gundabad. He does want a percentage of the treasure taken from Gundabad or reclaimed from Gundabad. But they all want that. So that's drawn up. And then there's a goodbye, and you're led down into the mountain. Escorted by some of Thorin's men out the other side. It's a pretty long walk, a couple of days through what initially begins as dwarven roads, but ends up being mostly caverns and caves and things like that. And at the end of the fifth day, you can see sunlight for the first time in a long time at the edge of this this cave. The dwarves lead you to there, and they give a crisp salute, and you can see that beyond are the rolling hills of Forlinden and the great trees, and you can even see the white towers beyond of an elven settlement. That's where we'll go next time. We're going to
Beregond bursts into song.
Yeah, absolutely, I would. So thanks, gents, for playing. I hope you had fun. I certainly did. And thank you for watching if you did. See you next time.